Lying to an empath does not just fail, it backfires. And the part that makes this dangerous is simple, because what they do next, most people never see coming. At first, everything seems normal. They listen, they nod, they stay calm. There is no argument, no sudden reaction, no clear sign that anything is wrong. That silence tricks people. It creates a false sense of control. It makes it feel like the lie worked. But under the surface, something very different is happening. An empath does not experience conversations the way most people do. Words are only a small part of what they process. They pay attention to tone, energy, small pauses, and subtle shifts that others miss. They do not just hear, they sense. And once that sense is triggered, it is almost impossible to turn it off. This video will break down why lying to an empath creates consequences that most people completely underestimate. You will understand how empaths detect dishonesty without needing proof, why they often stay quiet instead of reacting, and the exact moment everything changes inside them. There is a hidden pattern behind their behavior that very few people recognize. It explains why someone who once cared deeply can suddenly become distant, silent, and emotionally unavailable. There is also a lesser-known truth that makes this even more intense. Empaths often give more chances than they should, and that patience is misunderstood as weakness. In reality, it is a process of observing, feeling, and slowly pulling back energy without announcing it. By the time the shift becomes visible, the decision has already been made. As this video continues, each layer will reveal how trust is built in an empath's mind, how it quietly breaks, and why it almost never returns in the same way once it is damaged. This is not just about honesty. It is about understanding a type of awareness that operates on a deeper level than logic alone. Many people only realize this too late, when the connection is already fading and the warmth they once felt is gone without explanation. Stay with this until the end, because the final insight will change the way you see emotional connection and honesty in a way that is hard to ignore. It will show why the biggest mistake is thinking that silence means everything is fine. Welcome to the channel. If this kind of deep, eye-opening content speaks to you, make sure to subscribe and be part of a community that sees beyond the surface. There is a quiet illusion that forms around empaths, and it is built on how calm they appear on the surface. People see kindness, patience, and emotional openness, and they translate that into weakness. They assume an empath will avoid conflict at all costs, that they will overlook small inconsistencies, and that they will choose peace over truth every time. This is where the misunderstanding begins. Because an empath does not react loudly or immediately, it creates the impression that nothing has been noticed. Silence becomes misread as unawareness. A lie slips through, and there is no confrontation, no tension, no visible shift in behavior. In that moment, the person telling the lie feels safe. They start believing the empath accepted the story without question. That belief slowly turns into confidence. Each time there is no reaction, it reinforces the idea that the empath is easy to fool. People begin to think they can control the narrative, adjust their words, and shape the situation without consequences. They rely on surface-level communication, focusing only on what is said out loud. But empaths are not focused on words alone. They are tuned into something deeper. They notice the delay before a response, the slight change in tone, the energy behind a sentence that does not fully match the message. These details do not always trigger an immediate response, and that is where the illusion grows stronger. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. The empath continues the conversation, keeps the same tone, and allows the moment to pass. This calm behavior makes others believe their assumption was correct. They think the absence of reaction means the absence of awareness. They tell themselves a simple story. If the empath noticed, there would have been a response. Since there was none, everything must be fine. That logic feels convincing, and it keeps the cycle going. Over time, this creates a gap between what is real and what is believed. The person lying becomes more comfortable, more relaxed, and sometimes even careless. They lean further into the idea that the empath is too soft to question anything. Meanwhile, the empath is quietly absorbing every detail, building a clear understanding beneath the surface, without needing to interrupt the moment or prove anything right away. Beneath the surface of every interaction, an empath is constantly reading more than what is being said. It happens quietly and almost instantly. Small changes begin to stand out in ways that others rarely notice. A slight shift in tone, a pause that lasts a fraction longer than usual, a sentence that feels rehearsed instead of natural. These details may seem insignificant on their own, but to an empath they form a pattern. The energy behind the words carries more weight than the words themselves. Even a confident voice can carry tension underneath it, and even a simple explanation can feel misaligned when the intention does not match the delivery. Body language becomes another layer of information. A brief break in eye contact, a change in posture, or a subtle stiffness in movement can reveal more than a long explanation ever could. An empath does not need to analyze these signals one by one. The understanding forms as a whole, like a quiet realization that settles in without effort. It is not about proving that something is wrong. It is about feeling that something does not fully connect. This awareness does not demand immediate action. It simply exists in the background, steady and clear. Hesitation plays a powerful role in this process. The space between words often carries more meaning than the words themselves. When someone searches for the right thing to say, adjusts their story mid-sentence, or adds unnecessary details to make something sound convincing, an empath senses the imbalance. It creates a subtle tension that is hard to ignore. Even when the story sounds complete on the surface, the feeling behind it does not settle the same way truth does. There is also a difference in how honesty feels compared to something altered. Truth tends to flow naturally. It does not need to be forced or carefully constructed. When that natural flow is missing, an empath notices the disruption. It does not always lead to confrontation. Often, it leads to quiet observation. Even in complete silence, the awareness remains present. No reaction does not mean nothing was understood. In many cases, it means everything was already recognized, just without the need to say it out loud. Silence in an empath is rarely empty. It carries intention, awareness, and control. When something feels off, they do not rush to respond or expose what they sense. There is a natural pause that takes place, almost like a step back from the moment. Instead of reacting, they begin to observe more closely. Every word, every shift in tone, every small inconsistency is allowed to unfold without interruption. This stillness can be misunderstood, especially by someone expecting an immediate reaction. It can look like acceptance or even agreement, when in reality it is a deeper process quietly taking place. They allow the moment to breathe. Rather than confronting the situation right away, they give it space. This space helps them understand whether what they are sensing is temporary or part of a larger pattern. Feelings are processed carefully, without the need to turn them into instant actions. An empath does not rely on impulse in these situations. They rely on clarity, and clarity takes time. The more they observe, the more connections begin to form beneath the surface. Small details start aligning, and the picture becomes clearer without the need for direct questioning. There is also a level of emotional awareness that shapes this silence. They understand that reacting too quickly can escalate things or shut down the truth completely. By staying calm, they keep the situation open. It allows the other person to continue speaking, to reveal more without pressure. In many cases, this leads to more insight than a direct confrontation would. The silence becomes a space where truth has room to surface on its own, even if it comes in fragments. At times, they choose to give chances. This does not come from a place of weakness. It comes from a willingness to see beyond a single moment. They consider the possibility of misunderstanding, stress, or fear influencing someone's behavior. That patience allows them to hold back judgment and give the situation time to correct itself. They may wait to see if honesty appears without being forced, or if the same pattern repeats. Each chance is part of a quiet evaluation, a way of understanding the person more fully before deciding how to respond. Throughout all of this, their calm presence remains unchanged on the outside. There is no urgency to prove what they know or to create tension. The silence continues, steady and controlled, while everything beneath the surface becomes clearer with time. The shift does not happen all at once. It builds slowly, almost quietly, through moments that seem small on the surface. Each lie adds a subtle layer of distance, a space that did not exist before. At first, it is barely noticeable. The empath still listens, still responds, still shows the same level of care. But something begins to change underneath that consistency. The emotional connection starts to lose its depth. What once felt natural and open begins to feel slightly guarded, as if a part of their attention is being held back. Repeated dishonesty creates a pattern, and patterns are difficult for an empath to ignore. It is not about a single moment anymore. It becomes a collection of experiences that start to connect. Each inconsistency reinforces the last, making it harder to dismiss or explain away. The patience that once created space now begins to create distance. Instead of leaning in, the empath starts to step back, not physically, but emotionally. The warmth in their responses becomes more measured. The energy they once gave freely becomes more controlled. Trust does not break loudly. It fades in quiet, almost unnoticeable ways. Conversations may continue, but they carry a different weight. There is less openness, less vulnerability, and a growing sense of caution. The empath no longer feels safe engaging in the same way. Even when they remain present, a part of them is already withdrawing. This is not driven by anger or the need to punish. It is a natural response to something that no longer feels stable or genuine. As this process continues, the connection begins to feel uneven. The effort that once flowed effortlessly now feels deliberate. The empath starts to question the meaning behind words, even when they sound convincing. Doubt settles in, not as a reaction, but as a steady awareness that something has shifted beyond repair. The bond that once relied on honesty now carries a weight that cannot be ignored. Over time, the distance becomes more defined. The empath may still be there, still engaging, but the depth of connection is no longer the same. The trust that once supported everything has weakened to a point where it cannot fully hold what it used to. Even if honesty returns later, it does not land the same way. The feeling has changed, and once that change settles in, it becomes a permanent part of how the connection is experienced moving forward. There is a moment when the change becomes visible, even though it started long before. The empath who once tried to understand everything begins to move differently. The need to explain fades first. They no longer feel the urge to clarify their thoughts, justify their feelings, or make sure they are fully understood. Conversations become simpler, shorter, and more contained. Where there was once depth and openness, there is now a quiet restraint. It is not forced. It happens naturally as their energy shifts away from the connection. The questions begin to disappear as well. An empath usually asks questions to connect, to understand, to create clarity. Those questions carry care and attention. When they stop asking, it signals a deeper change. Curiosity is replaced with distance. They are no longer searching for explanations or trying to make sense of what feels off. The answers they needed have already formed internally, and repeating the process no longer feels necessary. Silence takes the place of inquiry, and that silence holds more meaning than any question they once asked. At the same time, the way they care begins to change. It does not vanish completely, but it becomes different. The warmth that once flowed without effort becomes measured and controlled. They are still present, but their emotional investment is no longer the same. They give less of themselves, not out of bitterness, but out of awareness. The connection that once felt safe and open now carries a weight that holds them back from engaging in the same way. Their attention shifts inward, focusing more on protecting their own energy than maintaining what is no longer balanced. This change can feel subtle at first, especially to someone who is used to their consistent presence. The empath still shows up, still responds, still maintains a level of calm that looks familiar. But something essential is missing. The depth, the emotional intensity, the quiet understanding that once defined the connection begins to fade. The energy that used to be felt so strongly is no longer there in the same way. As this shift settles in, the difference becomes harder to ignore. The empath is no longer reaching, no longer bridging gaps, no longer holding the same space they once did. Their presence remains, but it feels lighter, more distant, as if a part of them has already stepped away without needing to say it out loud. The change becomes most visible in the way distance appears without any clear event to point to. There is no argument that marks the moment, no raised voices, no final conversation that explains everything. It happens quietly. The empath remains calm, composed, and steady on the outside, which makes the shift even harder to understand. From the surface, everything can look almost the same. They still respond, still acknowledge, still carry a familiar tone, yet something deeper has already moved. The connection that once felt alive begins to feel distant, as if an invisible line has been drawn. There is no need for confrontation. The empath does not feel driven to expose every detail or demand answers that no longer matter to them. The energy that once pushed for clarity has already been redirected. Instead of engaging in conflict, they step back internally. Their focus turns inward, creating space between what they feel and what they express. This creates a quiet separation that does not rely on words or explanations. It simply exists, steady and controlled. This kind of detachment can feel confusing because it lacks the signals people usually expect. There is no clear ending, no dramatic shift that makes the situation easy to define. The absence of intensity makes it harder to recognize what is actually happening. Someone might continue interacting with the empath, believing the connection is still intact, while the emotional depth that supported it has already faded. The warmth that once filled the space is replaced by something more neutral, more distant. The empath does not announce this change. There is no need to make it visible or to seek acknowledgement. The withdrawal happens naturally, guided by an internal decision that has already been made. Their presence becomes lighter, less invested, and more reserved. They listen without absorbing, respond without attaching, and remain calm without engaging on the same level as before. It is a quiet shift in energy that does not demand attention but changes everything beneath the surface. As time passes, the distance becomes more defined, even if it is never spoken about directly. The connection continues in form, but its depth has changed in a way that cannot be easily reversed or fully understood from the outside. There is a side of an empath that is easy to overlook because it does not demand attention. Their softness is often the first thing people notice. It shows in the way they listen, the way they respond, and the way they create space for others to be understood. This softness can be mistaken for fragility, as if it means they will always bend, always adjust, always stay the same. Beneath that surface, there is a different kind of strength that develops over time. It is not loud or forceful. It is steady, controlled, and deeply rooted in awareness. An empath learns through experience, especially through moments that challenge their trust and emotional openness. Each situation leaves an imprint, not in a way that hardens them, but in a way that sharpens their understanding. They begin to recognize patterns faster, to sense inconsistencies with more clarity, and to respond with greater control. This growth happens quietly, without the need to announce it. From the outside, they may appear the same, but internally they are adjusting, refining how they engage and where they invest their energy. Adaptation becomes a natural part of how they move through relationships. They start to set boundaries that are not always spoken, but clearly felt. The openness that once had no limits becomes more selective. They still care, but they choose where that care goes with more intention. Protecting their energy becomes essential, especially after they have experienced what it feels like to give too much in the wrong place. This protection does not remove their empathy, it directs it in a way that keeps it balanced and sustainable. There is also a clarity that forms once something is fully understood. When an empath recognizes the truth behind a situation, it settles in deeply. It is not something that fades or gets easily replaced by new explanations. That awareness stays present, influencing how they see future interactions and how they interpret behavior. Even when they remain calm and composed, that clarity guides every response and every decision moving forward. This inner strength does not need validation or recognition. It shows in the way they remain grounded, in the way they no longer chase understanding, and in the way they quietly choose what aligns with them and what no longer does. So lying to an empath is never just a small mistake that fades with time. It reaches deeper than words and leaves a mark that changes how they see you from that moment forward. What once felt natural and open slowly turns into distance that cannot be explained on the surface. Because an empath does not only remember what was said, they remember how it felt, and once that feeling shifts, everything connected to it begins to change as well. So lying to an empath is not just a mistake, it is the fastest way to lose someone who truly understood you. Have you ever felt someone lying without having clear proof, yet something inside you kept telling you the truth was different? Let me know in the comments. And if this made you think, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.